It starts with an itch and a tingle, and then it builds and expands. And suddenly, all at once, my legs won't let me stand. I scratch till my fingers go numb.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Suicide Sucks. Thank you very much for joining me. As you can probably hear, it's raining again in the camper van, so apologies if you can hear the drizzle banging down on the roof, but it just always seems to be raining when I come into the office. Anyway, today I have got Paul with me, Paul Denial, and he's a very good friend of mine. We work together as kind of writers and performers on the lighter side of life when we've just recently done a comedy sketch show. And Paul is fascinating, and when I first found out what a checkered life he'd had, I was quite surprised because I'd been friends with him for quite some time at that point. So it was quite shocking really that I didn't know certain things about his life. So he's had some pretty dark days, and the positive aspect to that is that he's here to tell the tale, and he's got loads of advice that, you know, maybe you could be listening in and this could be something that you're going through at the moment, and maybe what helped Paul could help you. Oh, that's the kettle boiling. Just turn that off. So tell us about your dark days, Paul. That's what we're here to talk about, your dark days and how you got through them.
I was always very driven to do better, to get better jobs, climb the ladder, climb the tree, climb the mountain, call it what you will, earn more to make a more comfortable life for the family. I have always been in sales or on the sales side of things. I trained at university to be a photographer, which never materialised. I ended up in photographic retail. This was back in the 70s, 1976. And from there, went out on the road, which I have to say is a very lonely occupation. There's nobody to talk to other than the people that you're trying to sell to. You've always got targets there, etc., etc. It may look a glamorous life to a lot of people. Company car. This was way before even car phones. But if things go wrong, you're the only one to talk to. I will say at this point, I'm not after any kind of sympathy whatsoever. What happened did happen, I should say. And that's that. I'm nowhere after any kind of sympathy. So I kept climbing the tree, kept getting better and better jobs, took the family down to Bracknell for a better job, which after 2 years fell apart. But within 3 weeks ended up with an even better job and moved back up north, still in sales, still out on the road. But computers by this time, they were the new thing, and just kept going like that, kept getting better and better jobs. Ended up at the world's third largest computer retailer, manufacturer retailer. Everything was good. Very, very stressful job, but very well rewarded. We were told we were among the top 10% of sales managers in Europe.
Wow.
So, which gave us a nice warm glow inside. But I have to say the stress levels were absolutely off the scale. After many years there and increasing drinking, my back went big style, and basically 2 operations on my spine in 3 years, and was hung out to dry. I was told by my doctor to retire if it was at all feasible.
Sorry, what age were you then?
I was 38, 39 years of age.
Oh my word.
And because it was my back, I was very, very limited in what I could do physically. And mentally, I just went farcically downhill. Farcically downhill, I was stuck at home. We didn't have the money to do that much. My wife was still working, the kids were at school. And I really started to drink. The only thing that really saved me and stopped things from getting any worse was the very limited funds. And it was all very, very secretive. Very secretive. My brother, who I was very close to, didn't know, even though we saw him on a regular basis, or I saw him on a regular basis. The neighbours didn't know, friends didn't know. Just a fact.
And your wife?
Yvonne knew there was something happening, but until the end days, I don't think she really knew what was there. And of course, I couldn't talk to anybody about it because it added to the mental anguish, the fact that I was so weak. Being normally a strong person, mentally, to be addicted like that and to be able not to be able to simply say no, I couldn't understand. I just couldn't understand it. You know, all I had to do was to not pick up a bottle or a glass or whatever. All I had to do was occupy myself in other ways. But, you know, I told myself that so many times, and I was so strong that I could give up drinking week after week after week. But obviously always went back to it. And that went on for a good 2 years.
So did you kind of feel like you were in control of it because you could give up? So it was like, oh, well, I know I can give up now, so I'll just keep going.
Kept telling myself that, but it always took me back. I hear people today saying, I've been this, I've been that, but I'm fighting it now. And I'm sorry, but I fervently believe that you cannot fight it. The way to recover is to actually give in and say, I can't fight it. It was during that time that I had 3 suicide attempts in those 2 years. Still got the physical and mental scars. They do fade with time, but never disappear. That's not what's keeping me without alcohol now. I've simply lived for over 30 years without it, and so possibly like a smoker that's been 30 years without a cigarette, there's no desire for it whatsoever. I'm perfectly comfortable with it. We still go out to pubs, restaurants, etc., etc., and you know, I don't care.
Yeah.
I look at people who are getting drunk and I just think how absolutely crazy. I never drank to get drunk. And once alcohol takes that, if you like, the final step, I don't believe people are drinking to get drunk. You know, that's a thing that young people go through that I still don't understand. For some reason they want to get off the head. But an alcoholic doesn't drink to get drunk. They drink to hit a certain level. They drink to satisfy this ludicrous craving.
Yeah. So you mentioned how you can't really get out of something like that until you give up. Is that, how did you reach a point where you thought, I've got to do something?
I'd been sectioned twice. once as a direct result of the suicide attempt. Sat with psychiatrists who didn't have the slightest clue what was going on, to be fair. They not even looked at blood alcohol levels or whatever it was, but just treated it as though it was a suicide attempt that they didn't understand. So that didn't help in the slightest. I mean, during that time, I'd be without alcohol for 3-4 weeks at a time, something like that. The final trigger, I mean, the suicide thing, it's just bizarre. I would hit a point so black that I could not see any way forward. I could not see what to do, how to get out of it. And the only way for me was thinking that what was on the other side couldn't be any worse than what I was going through. Which, you know, married, nice house, 3 kids, you know. It's when I went into alcohol treatment, one of the guys said, "Oh, it's a form of insanity," and 3 or 4 people protested, but I just accepted that. Because it's a form of insanity. You are not in control. You're not in control. The alcohol controls you. I won't go into a detail of any of the really, really low points, but we'd been on holiday for a fortnight. I had a wonderful time. No drink, no nothing, just a good family holiday. And we got back on I think probably Saturday night, somewhere around there. And I thought, great, you know, this time we're all right. And then I still found myself, and I have to word it like that, sat in the car with a bottle of vodka, trying desperately not to take the cap off. And then 5 minutes later, you know, I'd had a good swig and there I was again. So it was just utter despair at that point. Utter despair. And as I remember it, 'cause it's a long time ago.
Yeah, sorry, how old were you then?
I'd be around 40.
Right.
You know, so now 68. So it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
69.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it now. Since I quit, I have never ever looked backwards. I don't look backwards. It might sound ignorant or brutal or what. I don't know the day that my mum died or my dad died, where I come across other people who can quote the day and even the time, you know, the date. I can't. I look forward. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but that Tuesday afternoon, I'd been drinking again, and we sat down to dinner at night, and I took 2 or 3 mouthfuls, and I just got up from the table. I couldn't eat, and I went upstairs and I sat, and I don't know. Some people call it God, some people call it a higher power. I don't know, but something hit me, and I called Yvonne. She came up, and I said, "We've got to do something." I'm out of control with alcohol. I can't do it anymore. So I literally at that point gave in. Just gave in completely, and got a babysitter. Yvonne took me up to the hospital because we couldn't think of anywhere else to go. Sat for a couple of hours, as you do, in a side room. And a young female doctor came in. What's the problem? So I told her. Alcoholic, literally can't control it. And she said, oh, well done, that's the first step. Here's a business card with a number on it.
Oh my goodness.
Substance abuse people. Off you go. So we got in the car and we were driving home, and I do remember a lot of things very clearly. And I just turned to Yvonne, who was driving, and I said, that's not enough. And she said, what do you mean? I said, I know for a fact that I will get up tomorrow and I will drink again. And which obviously she couldn't understand. But I just knew it to be a fact. That's what was going to happen. And then she'd gone out to work the following day and came home and with very much trepidation after the kids were in bed, said, I happen to know somebody. You know, what are you prepared to do? What are you prepared to put up with? And I just said anything. And so Yvonne went to see this person, quite local, and she came in, and while she was out, the change in my mind was absolutely epic. I'd decided that whatever she said when she came in, I would do it. You know, if it's daft, but if somebody had said you've got to have your left arm amputated and you'll be all right, I would have done it.
Yeah.
It literally was that. I was prepared to do anything whatsoever because I knew the alternative.
Yeah.
You know, it was just going to get worse. I would lose Yvonne, the family, and very likely my life at some point.
So it's that mindset of I'm giving this responsibility to somebody else almost. I'm giving in, I need help.
When I was in treatment, and I know I'm moving backwards and forwards, but when I was in treatment, one of the guys in there, and they are all alcoholic, because again I fervently believe that there's only an alcoholic can understand and therefore help, said the best example I've ever heard was, would you get in the ring with Mike Tyson? Well, no. He said, right, imagine you get in the ring with Mike Tyson, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to get the shit beaten out of you for 3 minutes. He said, so you then stagger back to your corner and you plonk down and you think to yourself, I know what I was doing wrong. I was, you know, I've got to lean to the left. I've got to lean to the left. So they patch you up and you go out for another 3 minutes against Mike Tyson and you get the shit beaten out of you. So you stagger back to your corner and they patch you up and you think, I shouldn't be leaning to the left, I should be leaning to the right. So you get up and you go out for another 3 minutes with Mike Tyson. And what's going to happen? And it's the same with any kind of addiction. The only way that you can start to recover is by saying, I am not going to stand up and get in the ring with Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
You can't fight it. I say it's impossible. But Yvonne came in that night full of trepidation and what will you do, etc. So do anything, right. Well, we're going to go and see this chap on Friday night. So we got a babysitter again and went to this place, this guy's house. And the women went to the kitchen to make a cup of tea and I guess stay out of the way. And this chap started speaking. You know, why are you here? What's going on? So I started telling him, and within 2 minutes, I realised that, yeah, he knew. He knew exactly what I'd been going through because he'd done it himself. Very much older than I was, but he sat and listened a lot, and he said some things, and it was a total and utter revelation, because after all these years of torture, somebody understood. He had connections with a charity over at Gargrave. My biggest fear then was that, you know, I couldn't afford to do this. It was a month's stay, but at that time, councils did have money to put towards it. And again, long story short, he took me on the Monday morning to this place, and again, the people there fully understood what was going on, because they had been in that position. Simple as that. But you know, I was privileged enough to stay the 4 weeks. At the time, my God, it was hard, because basically what they do is analyse you. There's a lot of group work, just sat around talking, drinking endless coffee. But basically, in each group section of, say, 6 people, there'd be a leader there, a counsellor, who would guide it. And by the first Friday, I was absolutely torn in bits, because they make you look at every single aspect of your life. Then in the second week, they make it even worse.
Oh, God.
Third week, they're slightly more gentle, and by the 4th week, they sort of give you a few building blocks, some advice, what to do, what not to do. And I came out basically like a baby. You know, again, I was fortunate that I was on permanent health insurance by this time, and through my previous work. So didn't really have major financial problems that other people had. So I was able to take my time. One of the pieces of advice was don't make any major decisions for 2 years. But basically, I did take everything on board. I was in that incredible position of literally starting a new life. Everything that had gone before, but I didn't have to return to it.
Right. And was that, you obviously went from 4 weeks with all these people and support and everything else, and then back to Yvonne?
Yeah. I literally found it hard to decide, if we were going around the supermarket, what we wanted for dinner. It's a strange feeling. But the unbelievable thing is, people say to me, when they find out they haven't had a drink for this length of time, 20, 30 years, I don't know. They say, oh my God, you must be strong, you must have amazing willpower. And I say it every time, I don't think I have, because from the second that I picked up my last drink, I've never wanted a drink. From going through the treatment, from meeting the poison dwarf, as we used to nickname him, the lead counsellor, I've never wanted a drink. I'll not tell you his name, but he was nicknamed the poison dwarf because he was about 5'4", utterly foul-mouthed.
Really?
But he'd been through it all.
Yeah.
You know, he had the alcoholic blackouts where people laugh about him, you know, when you wake up New Year's Day and you can't remember what you've done. But it's bloody serious. It's destroyed that many brain cells that, you know, you're never going to remember it. And I find that terrifying. But he'd done all that, as we all had. So he knew, but he was utterly brutal. He was brutal in the way he spoke to you. You know, I'll not use his language, but it was brutal. you know,
But it obviously
stop
worked.
kidding yourself, and why do you think you did that? And well, you're an idiot, you know, and all this
Yeah.
kind of thing. And he didn't care who you were. There was a fine example of a 60-odd-year-old lady came in. In fact, she was older. Looked like everybody's granny. I did get to meet her. And she'd never drunk during her life. But her husband died. And suddenly, within 2 years, she was utterly destroyed. And she came in, and Dave just turned to her and said, well, you know, you're a fucking stupid old... and this, because he had to get through. He had to get rid of any pretensions that you had and any lies that you were telling yourself.
Yes.
And that.
And does this place still exist?
I found out years later that no, the funding was withdrawn from the council, and even though they had an incredible success rate, the well over 50% of people that went through the place years later were still sober.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, again, taking advice, I did go to AA meetings, but never really fitted in, other than one that there was a place down at Hillsborough, and I used to go there weekly, and they actually had a print shop, so I got involved in doing design work and doing printing and stuff like that, which again was great therapy, and I was very fortunate. You know, I'd got my skills and was able to employ those, and so gradually it all settled nicely. I was retired on doctor's orders for 10 years, but I, again, through doing odd bits of design work and this type of thing, I came across a remedial physiotherapist. I mean, bike was a mess. It was a real state, but she took a look at it and said it shouldn't be like this, and it was kind of the old barter system. I did design work for this centre and did all this printing and promotion, and she treated me on a weekly basis on my bike.
Really?
Yeah, so it worked out really, really well, and within
excellent.
6 months I was physically transformed,
Right.
you know, and the mental side was going well.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah, that led on, and I just kept going, and then eventually I was itching to get back to work. I clearly wasn't ready
Yeah.
for this full retirement. But again, I was able to choose what I wanted to do, so I started some part-time teaching with computers, and that grew and grew and grew. And then, lo and behold, funding for that was cut. So I actually went back into the computer marketplace and did 7 years at a Sheffield-based company. Out on the road, believe it or not, but you know, not really travelling that far down to South Derbyshire and all around. But again, all my training came into play, because I'd be dealing one morning with a major council, talking about a £250,000 contract, and then in the afternoon I'd be in the tiniest junior school in Derbyshire. So every day was different. I was largely my own boss. I have to say, very successful, which is why they kept employing me.
Yeah.
You know, so that was great, and I used to go back to the treatment centre, as they wanted us to, on a Friday night to talk to people that were in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was good, because when I was in treatment, this guy came in, Rod, and I literally just looked at him this Friday night, and there was this kind of glow about him, and some of the things he said, and I just thought, that's exactly what I want. That's exactly what I want. And we actually became very good friends. Very good friends. He passed a couple of years ago, unfortunately. But yeah, even after I left, and for years and years, we were really good friends. So there are all these positives, but there was one Friday night when I'd gone back, probably about 6 months after I'd been in there originally. And I sat in this chair at the front, and there was the poison dwarf sat there. And he said, "So, how much are you drinking now?" And I said, "No, I don't." And I sort of gave as good as I got by then. And he said, "Well, why aren't you?" And I said, "Well, you know, life's good, and it's a lot easier. There's no more lying. There's no more waking up in the morning feeling utterly dreadful. And whereas the last thought in your head at night and the first thought in the morning is drink. Have I got some? Where can I get some? How can I get some?" And it is that.
Yeah. So looking back at it all, you know, we've talked about how you can't fight it when you're suffering from addiction. What to you was your lifesaver, I suppose? What was it that helped you to come out of it ultimately?
It was that one afternoon where I got up from the dinner table and I went upstairs. And I was just... The depths of despair, I can't begin to describe. It was just, this is it. You know, I'd had 3 suicide attempts. Serious ones, they weren't a cry for help. I was more determined than that. Really serious attempts, and I could see nothing else in front. I was just wit's end, and they say you've to hit a rock bottom, and everybody's rock bottom is different. And I was very, very fortunate that I hit mine when I did, because you can say or believe what you want about addiction. It's an illness, and an illness has a definable path. And if you're lucky you hit a rock bottom, there are other people that haven't. You know, very famous people that you read about. George Best, you know, fought it and fought it and fought it. He did all the classic things like moving from London away from that life to Dublin or Belfast or wherever he went to back home. But then you can't run away from it because it's inside.
Yeah.
So how the hell can you can't move to France and hope to get better because it's still inside you. But the alcohol's cheaper.
So hitting rock bottom really it's for you, it was all about that kind of signified an admittance to, I need help.
Yeah.
I've got a problem.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I'd done everything. I'd done all the classic stuff, hiding, lying, everything like that, you know, which I'm obviously not proud of. I'd done everything. I was the classic. And it's impossible to describe what is or isn't in your mind when you decide to swallow bottles and bottles of pills, or when you take a bloody scalpel to yourself, you know, or the hose pipe on the car exhaust. You know, it's impossible to describe what is in your mind at that time. I do know if there's interruption at that point, it's the best thing that can happen. Again, I'll say I was fortunate because it was an addiction. You know, it wasn't an ongoing depression as other people have, for which they need lifelong treatment. Yeah, my lifelong treatment, if you like, is not to touch alcohol, which I've already said. I have no desire for it whatsoever. I've been put in situations where I've been badgered and battered, and you know, it's been very difficult to just say no or just walk away. And that does happen. It really does happen. I mean, the first time you go out in company or to a restaurant or whatever, or to somebody's house, what are you drinking? What are you drinking? I'll have a cup of tea. No, you can have a drink, you know. It's difficult sometimes.
And a lot of people think that you're being boring if you're not drinking as
Yeah,
well, because
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
you're spoiling my fun almost.
Exactly, yeah. You've got to join me. Some of the amazing things that have happened in the last 20, 30 years have been incredible. I said to the Poison Dwarf, because life's better, it's easier, and some of the things that have happened to me, I've done charity work in Romania and Bosnia and places like
Yeah.
that. It's amazing the things that can happen. It's utterly remarkable. You know, the best thing is you get a form of peace in your head. And that, again, I was able to sit down and more or less decide who I wanted to be, because the person I'd been up to that point was clearly wrong. Just chasing the money and this kind of thing, and I don't know. I guess it sounds very arrogant. I probably wanted to be admired for my achievements. You know, what I was able to do, and the company I was working for did that very well. You know,
Yeah.
you were financially well rewarded, but equally at sales meetings, international sales meetings. You know, we flew everywhere. Company American Express cards and you name it. They flattered you.
Yeah.
They stroked your ego, and all, because all they wanted. The last year I was there, I had a £10.5 million target. £10.5 million. In today's money, to be two and a half times that easily.
Yeah.
You know, but we accepted it and got on with it, and I say the stress levels were that bad that two other people at the same company did commit suicide. One was a technical manager who was found hanging in his garage
Oh my God.
at Christmas, and the other one, younger than I was at the time, hose pipe on the company car. That was the stress level, and I think I was very fortunate because I had a safety valve of alcohol,
Right.
and that's how I look at it now.
Yeah.
You know, without that, I don't know. What ultimately made me give in, I don't know. Call it the higher power. Call it God. You know, a lot of people are put off by that three-letter word, but it's. I've got my own beliefs about it, but they'll probably stay as my own beliefs.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, and you're here to live to tell the tale, so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
a fantastic outcome.
And I, you know, being fully retired now, I am able to do what I want, and I was actually made redundant in a financial turndown, and which made me stop and think again, and it coincided with my wife being seriously ill, and having 5 weeks in hospital, and then I suddenly got this redundancy notice, and I went home one afternoon in my suit on a hot summer's day, and Yvonne was in the garden just recuperating, and I just handed the letter to her, said, "You better read this." Went upstairs and got out the suit and everything and came back down. She said, "Oh, how do you feel?" And I just said, "I don't give a flying." Because there are more serious things in life, you know, more to be worried about, a lot more to be worried about.
Yeah.
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 So I think, I don't know, might sound a bit arrogant, but I think when you've been right down in the depths and managed to get yourself out with help, then, you know, A, you're a different person, and B, you're a somewhat better person, more balanced, more insightful, probably.
Absolutely.
That does sound arrogant, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't sound arrogant at all. You know, you've had a second chance, haven't you? Almost.
I
It's a
very
bit
much
like that.
was given a second chance,
Yeah.
but grasped it.
Yeah.
There are people that far less fortunate than me. They're, you know, dry drunk. Yeah, they've stopped drinking, but my God, they're still tortured, and because that is still inside them. You know, simply swapping alcohol for tea or coffee doesn't work. It has to be a total change in the brain.
Like a reset.
A total reset. It's a good example, yeah. Computer's not working properly, press the reset button.
Yeah.
Or your mobile phone or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a massive difference.
Paul, thank you so much for talking to me.
Very, very welcome. I said at the beginning, I'm not after any kind of sympathy at all. What happened, but I genuinely hope, and it's why I did the charity work in a bloody hellhole in Romania and a country recovering from war in Bosnia. I went out there 2 summers working out there. You just hope that you can help one person.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what the Suicide Sucks podcast is all about. I'm you know, even if one person was listening to this today and listened to your relationship with alcohol and thought to themselves, that is me, then maybe, you know, it can give them the hope to and the courage to ask for help.
It starts with an itch and a tingle, and then it builds and expands. And suddenly, all at once, my legs won't let me stand. I scratch till my fingers go numb.